I'm gonna do a little bit more practice with a two-dimensional array. One of the pre-response questions last year in the AP exam really focused on the idea that a two-dimensional array is an array of arrays. Okay, so I was going to talk a little bit about that. So I've already mentioned it before, but again, it's really important. So this is a two-dimensional array called nums, and this is a one-dimensional array. That is a one-dimensional array. One-dimensional array, one-dimensional array. There's 4 arrays. Okay, so if you do nums dot length, it will give you 4, because there are four arrays, right? And if you wanted to know the how many elements are in a particular row or a particular array, you could get the length of an individual array. Okay. So an example here. This is not the same as the one last year. Last was you found the row sums. Okay. So this is a little different because we're just going to find the sums of the columns. So one thing about the AP exam, they're going to always give you an example or 2 or maybe 3, but you're never going to code for a particular example. You're going to code for the general case. So what this method is going to accomplish is taking a two-dimensional array of integers and return an array of integers which represents the sums of the columns. So in other words, the array is going to be of size 3. And it's the first element will be the sum of this first column, which would be 13. Then the second number will be the sum of these, which would be 13. And lastly, the sum of the third, which would be 8. Okay? So you should give us 13, 13, 8. An array, that would be 13, 13, 8, which is the sum of the columns. So, what we're going to do here is, the array, a lot of people have been talking about rows and columns, which is what I'm even calling column sums here. You can kind of visualize it like this, okay? Rows and columns. So, what the column sums? So, the way we do that is first, by the way, this returns an array of integers. So, I need to create an array of integers. I'll just call it temp. Now, I do know what the size of that array is. That's going to be how many columns there are. So again, we're going to assume that this is a rectangular array. So what temp is, otherwise it would be a little trickier to do. So what temp is, or is obviously an array of events. And the size of that, we realize is going to be 3. Why is it 3? Each one of these arrays has 3. So what I can do is take 2D, which is the two-dimensional array that's passed here. I can get any of its elements, which I know it has at least 1. So let me do row 0, which is basically referring to, in this particular example, this array. And let me get the length of that. Okay, so the length of a two-dimensional array, if I didn't have the bracket 0 here, it would give you the number of rows, which in this case is 4. I don't have 4 sums, I have 3 sums. Okay, so I have to get the length of the column, the first column for the 0th column, and that's how many sums I'll have. Okay. So, what I'll do now is I will progress through each column. Now, it's very common for the outside loop, when you're going through a two-dimensional array, to be what row you're on. My outside loop is going to represent what column that I'm on, because I'm just going to take the sum of these numbers first, then these numbers, then these numbers. Okay? So, the way it'll work is I'll start an integer I equal to 0, and I will go as long as 2D bracket. It's really, you can do I here, or no, you can't do I here. Let's just do 0. So when you do 2D 0 again, that is the number of columns that you have, which is 3. So this will progress from 0, 1, and 2, which would be what the column value is for all of these. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do in the inside for loop is I'm going to, and again, this one's actually harder than the one that was on the AP exam last year. It's a little bit more natural to work with rows than it is columns. So, inside the loop, I'm going to, I have column I every time. So I 0, then I'm column 0. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I guess I need to create a sum. Be 0. Okay. So I'm just going to add up the values in each column. So in the inside for loop, I'll call it J. I'll progress through each row. So as long as J is less than 2D dot length. That's how many rows there are. Okay. And what I will do every time, remember, sum represents the sum of a particular row, or excuse me, a particular column, is I'm going to add sum plus equals, which means I'm adding whatever this is to the sum every time. And it will be 2D bracket J bracket I. Now, J represents what row you're on, or which array we're pulling from. I represents what column we're pulling from. And I, for the first pass through, will always be 0. That's representing I'm always on the 0 column, 2, 4, 2, 5. Now I'm going to add those up. Okay. Now, at the end of that for loop, it'll be the sum of that column. So what I'm going to do is make that value. So it would be temp bracket I, because this is what column I'm doing. I'm doing a 0th column right now, is equal to sum. Whatever the sum of those elements were when I added the columns, added the elements in the first column. Okay? And then I will become 1, and that would be the next column, the second column, the next 1. And start sum to be 0 again. And it will progress through the entire row, or all the rows from that column. Each time it'll add sum. Okay? So when I get to the outside loop, I've gone through all columns, and I've created all the column sums. So I'll return temp. It does. Okay. So if I wanted to, let's say int x equals column, and I'm in the same class here, so there's no need to do a dollar for an object. Column sums nums. Okay, so column sums expects a 2-dimensional array. I gave it a 2-dimensional array, this one right here. Okay, so now x, which can't just be x, it's got to be, it's an array. X is an array. So if x represents the sums of the columns. That's what x is. Okay? So if I wanted to see that, I could just go through and I'm just going to turn them out. Remember, x is the array, I is the index. Okay. So again, we should get 13, 13, and 8. As long as I added that up right. 13, 13, and 8. So that's it. That's going to help you with the picture lab. There's a lot of different manipulations of two-dimensional array. You really have to get the idea that it is an array of arrays and be comfortable working with columns and rows.